All right, guys. Final topic for the day, as always, comes from the users. If you have a topic, tweet me at Tim Gettys, like the Ghost 6 did. With Inafune's Mighty Number 9 and Igarashi's Castlevania successor, do you guys see Kojima making an indie Metal Gear follow-up?
Yeah, I can see that.
Lord, I would love
I can see it going either way, where he does that or he just does something completely
Totally
fucking
different.
crazy with robots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
And either way, I mean, I'm in.
Yeah.
But the idea of a fresh start on the ideas of Metal Gear and what made Metal Gear good,
right.
but in 2015 or 2016, 2018, whatever the fuck, holy shit. That sounds so good to me.
Wipe away all the story that keeps so many people away from it, you know what I mean, and bring it in. Like, all right, we're starting fresh. You're this guy. You're a super soldier. Let's have some stealth gameplay.
But like, there's still like not the codec, but something like the codec, and there's not the like the Metal Gears, but there's something like the Metal Gears. I would love that.
Yeah, I think that I don't think Inafune and Igarashi are different than Kojima because they've all of them started making games around the same time in the mid 80s, but they're all basically peers. But Inafune and Igarashi had to go in a different route because their stuff became more niche and like their what they were doing became more suspect in terms of a money making proposition, which is why they had to go to Kickstarter. Or presumably, I mean, that's the rumor about Igarashi. Who the fuck knows what he's going to do? But Inafune went to Kickstarter with a lot of success. Kojima is going to go to a AAA publisher. Like I feel it, you know, like I know it.
Where
like,
do you feel it?
In my balls. I feel it in my balls. Like
Good.
Kojima, I've said it before. I said it on my video. I said it on other things. Like Kojima can do whatever he wants. It's different, you know. Like Kojima is a name, and I love Inafune more than I love Kojima by far. But Inafune isn't a household name with gamers. Kojima is, as someone wrote, I don't remember who, saying like he's like the only guy that still puts his name on his games. Like Kojima presents, you know. Inafune doesn't do that, you know, and he's going to have such great opportunities that Inafune and Igarashi weren't provided, especially because he already has deep connections to the Western publishing world. That, you know, Kojima's going to land at EA or Activision or something like that. I'm going to be really shocked if he doesn't land at one of these big publishers.
But say he does that, does he make a Metal Gear clone?
Maybe. I hope not. I think that I don't know that he wants to do that, and people forget that he made other games, so it's not like that's all he can make. I mean, he made Zone of the Enders and stuff too, so it's, you know, he has other ideas. He wants to do other things. He's always talked about an eagerness to not make Metal Gear. And you often have to wonder if he really even wants to make these fucking games, you know, or if it's just like he has contracts and he has bills to pay and they're paying him lots of money. At some point, if you're Kojima and they're paying you $2 million a year, whatever the fuck he makes, I'm sure he makes a lot of money. Which is probably part of the reason Konami need to get rid of him. Eventually you're gonna be like, fine. You know, I can make $500,000 a year making what I want, or I can make $2.5 million a year. And I'm just throwing these numbers out, but $2.5 million a year and just making another Metal Gear game and makes my life easier in the long run. I'm sure he's pent up with fucking ideas, and I'm sure the conversation's already happening. Like that's the crazy thing, and like you wish you knew like who was talking to him and the people that is, you know, you can imagine a company like Activision sending a whole group of people out to Tokyo to talk to him. You can imagine EA courting him eagerly, saying like, "We'll give you a fucking studio. We'll make a studio."
Do you think there's any chance of an announcement at E3?
No. I think that this game has to come out first.
Exactly. That's for sure the contract he has, is that it comes out and then they finish it'll come out and then it'll still be like 3 months, 4 months, like with DLC and what's happening on Metal Gear Online. Like there's definitely a gag order in terms of like what they're paying him through something for sure.
Yeah. All right. Do the new consoles have a killer app yet? Is the killer app still relevant? Asks Tylker Nope. Tylker.
Sure.
No, none of them have killer apps, and no, killer apps are not necessary anymore. The evidence is in the numbers. I mean, it's that easy. You know, like the evidence is in the numbers.
Yeah. What do you tell your friend to buy on PlayStation 4, right? Like, we can name a laundry list of games, and I know Resogun's at the top for Colin, but it's not necessarily like you have to buy the PlayStation 4 to play X.
Mario 64.
Right.
Mario World.
Yeah.
You know, all that
Sonic.
stuff. Yeah.
Toe Jam and Earl.
I mean, imagine.
Comic Zone.
I mean, think about this. Like, GameCube and Xbox, the original Xbox, both had killer apps immediately. And, you know, Halo was out in Smash.
Oh,
so, you know, and I think GameCube actually, Xbox, I don't intimately know as well. I had an Xbox later. 2003, I got my Xbox, but I had my GameCube at launch. And what I always marveled at with the GameCube and why I loved it so much was that it got better and better and better. By 2005, the GameCube was fucking extraordinary. It didn't matter because no one bought it anyway. They were dropping the price like extraordinarily. GameCube really struggled, as we all know and remember. And Xbox had its similar struggles. And ultimately, GameCube settled around 22 million and Xbox settled around 24 million. Well, in 16 months, PlayStation 4 has already outsold the GameCube lifetime, which is fucking insane. And it has no Smash Brothers, and it has no Super Mario Sunshine, and it has no Beautiful Joe, and no Resident Evil 4, and none of these games at all. Not even anything close.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the craziest thing is that it's well on its way. In a month or two, it's going to outsell Xbox, and then it's going to go keep going. And it's like, why? And so we don't know the answer to that. All we know is we can infer from that the killer app doesn't matter because Killzone, Shadowfall, and Resogun, and Second Son, and all these games, The Order and Bloodborne, they're not the killer apps. They might be good games, but they're not the killer apps.
Is this just another example of us, like we've experienced so many generations of consoles and seeing that the killer app hasn't been around for a while? Like you bought your PlayStation 2 because of DVDs, and it made sense that you had a PS2 when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out and Metal Gear Solid 2 came out. Those were your games where you're like, holy
I think
fucking
those
shit.
were the killer apps, though.
But that was a year later, Tim. That's what I'm saying. It's like.
But I don't think the killer app needs to be a launch thing, though. Like it happened to have been that way for a lot of the consoles. But I do think that Metal Gear Solid 2 and specifically Grand Theft Auto 3 were killer apps for PS2.
Sure.
And then it's funny that you say Smash Bros. Because I didn't even really think of that as a killer app.
People fucking
GameCube.
love that.
That's
That's
one
one
of
of
the-
the,
for us.
I know that, but Halo definitely was like that thing. But I think that it was last generation that didn't really have that game, and I don't think it ever got that game, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could it's funny because killer app is an old term. Killer app is an old computing term from before we were even born about the things that you needed. Applications. It wasn't even games. Killer app doesn't even mean game. It's killer application. The thing that you could like spreadsheets and shit like that, or like IBM PC's killer app in like 1982. That's why people bought them. Is I can do like math and like compute and do like real computing on this kind of thing. Today, there's such a spectrum of things that we can do with these consoles that I think that, and such a spectrum of games available on these consoles. If you ever go to PlayStation Blog or Major Nelson and you look at just the games that are coming out every week, it's like the killer app mentality has been replaced by the volume mentality. And there's a volume of, there might not be, PlayStation 4 might not have, I think Resogun's a fantastic game, but it might not have The Last of Us in terms of its masterpiece. It's on PS4, but it's not a native game to PS4. But it necessarily doesn't need that because PS4 already has a shit ton of good games. And I think that people are excited about that. I think people are understanding more and more that the indie culture, the $10 to $20 game culture is what's going to drive these consoles. And the things like Bloodborne that come out or when Uncharted 4 comes out or whatever, these are like the supplemental tent poles that are really important. But clearly the consoles are not selling because of them. It's something that people have to wrap their heads around because it's very unintuitive. It doesn't make any sense. And Titanfall is a good example with Xbox One. Like when Titanfall came out that month, PS4 still outsold Xbox One. It didn't make any sense. And then you could read into it and be like, well, maybe people bought Xbox One earlier because they were anticipating Titanfall. Maybe that's possible. Maybe that's the truth. But you would expect, I suspect we'll see something similar when Uncharted 4 comes out, where Uncharted 4 comes out whenever the fuck it comes out in 2016, and people are like, oh, well, there wasn't a huge spike in PS4s. And it's like, because people are just buying them anyway.
So many people already have this anticipation.
I think people just want them. This whole console cycle, the end of the Xbox 360 and PS3 cycle, and then the Wii U kind of bombing, and then PS4 and Xbox One coming out swinging and doing really well, all of it's unintuitive. None of it makes any sense. Like that, through the conventional way we look at it. Wii U should have been a huge success based on Wii, but no one cared, right? Like 360 and PS3 just fell off a cliff. People forget that the console sales looked so impressive when PS4 and Xbox One came out by percentage because PS3 and Xbox 360 sales were so soft. So that was like a comparison, and we didn't expect that because a lot of good games were coming out at the end of the console cycle. Now we have really no AAA exclusives that really matter. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. It's just that there's nothing there. Like on PS4, I don't know if Xbox Ones feel differently, but I'm not looking at Bloodborne and being like, I think Bloodborne's a great game. Bloodborne's not a game that bro guy walks into a store, he doesn't really know much about games, or whatever, and he sees Bloodborne, I don't give a fuck.
He didn't see a cool ad on TV and then go buy it.
So it's just it's so, that's why the industry is so fascinating right now, is because none of it makes any sense. It's so weird. What's going on.
Really bizarre.
That's why the last question was so interesting that you asked her a couple questions ago about like what the console space looks like or what games look like. Who the fuck even knows at this point? It's all unpredictable. Not even guys that are really well respected like Pact or any of these guys can possibly tell you what's going to happen. Like it's a wild space out there, man. That's what makes it so unpredictable, and that's what makes it so fun.
More Saiyan wants to know, how come no one's talking about Armored Core?
Because no one likes Armored Core. Armored Core isn't as popular as you think it is. As somebody had to review those games, no.
I feel like it's one of those weird games. What are your thoughts on Armored Core?
It's not for me. I mean, Armored Core is this thing that always existed over there.
Yeah,
Yep.
but it's weird though,
Yeah,
because it's like it's such a weird thing, but like the people that like it really
Love it.
like
The
it.
people who like it fucking love it.
And
Yeah.
I get tweets almost every time. I'm like, hey, what do you guys want us to talk about?
Is it
games?
just more cyan every
It's
time?
not. No. There's a bunch. I've made notes. There's multiple people. It might be just him with a bunch of different accounts. But it's just like, it's crazy that there's definitely some Armored Core fans that are like wondering why it's not being talked about. And like, that's a interesting thing to me that like, you know, as game sites like IGN, GameSpot and whatever, just try to stay relevant, more and more just talking about mainstream games and not so much focusing on the Armored Cores and stuff. It's like, I don't know who is going to talk about Armored Core.
Exactly. Yeah, there's fan sites and there's message boards and there are the communities you go to and the podcasts you go to that are all about Armored Core. And like that's a great example of like how you have to try to make it work, right? Like that's a very if the people putting out Armored Core are setting their expectations right, they can be an Atlas. They can be a company who's like, we don't have to sell that many copies of this, you know, niche RPG or whatever, JRPG. But if they're trying to go out there and be in the middle tier, that, you know, that THQ space, they're in trouble. You have to set your expectations.
Yeah.
Fans are there for it, sure. But like, yeah, that's a great. I had not thought of Armored Core in fucking years until you just said that.
Yeah.
Word. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, are they still making them? Of course they are.
Sure.
Is there
Yeah.
3 coming out this year? Probably. That's just how those fucking things work. All right. Last question for today. It goes back to the future topic. Jack Daniels 524 says, nope. Daniels Salas says, with smartphones around, will handheld consoles die out? We didn't really touch on handhelds too much. Will there be handheld consoles in 10 to 15 years?
No.
Yeah, it's one of those loaded questions. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a middling one that doesn't do anything well, but I mean, theoretically, no, there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I don't see, and I guess it depends on what this NX is, if it's like what we're talking about, if that counts as a handheld or how it goes. But yeah, you figure, I still think, and I know Colin always says PlayStation's crazy enough to do it. I got to imagine the Vita's over. I got to imagine they vacate the handheld space here, you know what I mean? Just with their current commitment level to it and how it's all been going and how even off PSP, the tailspin, the 7-year tailspin. But like, yeah, Nintendo and the DS even, like, they've now got this other partnership, right? They are getting their games on mobile devices, like, and again, I still see them leaving hardware as well. So then are we counting like the NVIDIA Shield? There's always,
no.
I feel like there's always going to be a peripheral.
There's always going to be
person
someone doing
something.
stuff, but like it's not going to be a thing in the industry that people are talking about.
Sure.
You know, like I guess when I think about it, it's like, is IGN going to have a tab for that channel? You know what I mean? Like, is it going to, when you go to the front page, are you going to see the whatever the hell it is?
Sure.
You know, and I don't think so. I think it's just going to be phones.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, I was saying before, phones and tablets, you know, people were talking a lot and prognosticating a lot about, you know, how they would affect console gaming or just gaming generally. It didn't, right? Like the effect wasn't there. The effect was there in a more microscopic way on handhelds, clearly and demonstrably. So like the DS was 150 million plus sold, right? 3DS, nowhere near that. PSP, 80 million sold. Vita, not even close. You know, like it's just clear as day. Like it's obvious. And the games are better, and the consoles and the handhelds are better, and it's more enticing. You can do more with them, but people don't care. And I think that is because of the phone. And I don't necessarily think it's even because of games or people playing games on the phone. I think it's just like people are like, I'm entertained now.
Yeah, I already
I'm
got
reading Twitter,
something.
and I'm just gonna. So I'm not entirely convinced that like there's a 1-to-1 thing where it's like I don't own Vita, I don't own 3DS, I play games on my phone. I think it's more I don't own 3DS, I don't own Vita, I have a phone and I fuck around with it.
Yeah, I look at
You
my
know?
mail, I look at my Twitter, I look at my Instagram.
Like I don't need this other thing, you know. So I think that while console gaming is stronger than people expected it to be, arguably you might even say stronger than ever in terms of the early sales of PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Who knows how it tails out at that point? We don't know. The handheld space is dying. It's obvious, and I think Sony's. Yeah, I've said Sony's crazy enough to do another Vita. I think they still might be crazy enough to do it. I think they've probably mocked one up and have R&D going on it, or maybe they just pulled the plug on it. I don't think it ever sees the light of day. I think Nintendo's the only one left that can really do it, and the NX will be probably that, but it'll be something unusual, you know.
I'm very excited for that. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the first ever episode 19 of the Kind of Funny Games cast. Tweet me at Tim Gettys your topics that you want us to discuss on the show next week, and until then, I love you.